It's that time. The GBNews pub is opened. I'm joined on Talking Pints by Graham Stringer, MP. Welcome to the programme. Good to see you. Graham, I've been very critical over the years of members of Parliament, you know, straight from university, straight into research offices. But you shouldn't be in politics. You worked in industry.
I did. I was an analytical chemist in the plastics industry for 10 years. A long time ago now, but yeah.
Yeah, so you actually had you do have a background in the real world. And I guess that's probably shown itself throughout your career. Local politics, running Manchester City Council. I'm really interested in what your view on HS2 is, because I keep hearing from politicians in Manchester that HS2 is going to be this great boon for Manchester. What's your take on all of that?
Oh, I've always supported HS2.
Yeah.
It's both about capacity, getting more people between the major centres in this country, and it's also about speed. One of the ways I put it is, if speed didn't matter, capacity didn't matter, and I don't want to be rude to small towns in the northwest of England, but Workington and Barrow would be amazing successes because they're a long way away from everywhere. And most places in the world believe that connectivity, whether it's by air or rail, is important. They want to be near other big centres so people can trade, do business, whatever. So I think HS2 is a no-brainer.
I worry about the cost of it, and I worry whether it could drive business.
It's expensive.
And I wonder whether it could drive it the other way. But I want to get your take on it, because it does seem that Manchester really wants this.
Yeah. And it is expensive, but it's likely to last for 100 years. Our current rail system has been there for nearly 200 years.
You can tell that some days, can't you?
You can. It's been there for nearly 200 years. It's a major investment. So if you discount it over that period, it's not as expensive as it seems.
You did local politics for all those years in a very senior position. You've been in the House of Commons now since 1997.
Yeah.
Which do you prefer, local politics or national politics?
I've worked out an answer to that over the years, and it is that all my best times and worst times are in local government. You're closer to immediate decisions and people and very difficult decisions. It's much more even whether you're a minister or a member of Parliament in the House of Commons, much more even. Although during the sort of Brexit debates, it didn't feel very even.
Well, let's have a think about that. Let's have a look at the Brexit debates, because, the Labour, everyone forgets this, but it was back in the 70s. It was the Labour Party that believed joining the common market would be bad for British workers. It was going to be a market for big businesses and big banks. They were right about much of it. And somehow, was it Kinnock, Blair? Somehow the Labour Party changed, didn't it?
It was Thatcher and Delors, really. Because Delors, who was the president of the EU Commission...
And a very powerful figure.
Yeah, and very intellectually powerful as well. He came along to the TUC, I think in 1988, and said, forget about Thatcher, she's bad for you. We can sort out the industrial relations law in Brussels. And overnight, it changed the Labour movement, and more slowly, the Labour Party to be pro-EEC, as it was then, in the EU.
Yeah. So by the time the referendum came, it was quite difficult. In fact, I've got a picture here, Graham, of you at a Leave Means Leave event. That's a clip of you. Let's have a clip of Graham.
But what happened was people didn't do as they were told. The establishment are still in a state of shock. They can't believe that this extraordinary life that they have been living, and that's cosy for them, not cosy for the rest of us who are not doing as well as we can because we're in the EU. I can't believe that the people saw through the sham that is the EU. So what do you do when that happens? Well, you're all stupid, aren't you? You didn't understand what it was. Well, I went out on the day and talked to people. They weren't angry. People only voted this way because they were poor, or they were angry. Actually, people had a profound and fundamental sense of democracy.
You must have felt very strongly about that issue, because there you were, a Leave Means Leave, with people like me. And you must have had a lot of stick over this.
Since the 70s, what we were just talking about, I voted in 75 not to join, and I've never really changed my view on that. So when I was selected as a Member of Parliament, it wasn't a big issue in '96 when I was selected, but I made it very clear that I didn't think the EU was a good idea. So I think in politics, certainly within the Labour Party and probably the Conservative Party in Parliament, if people know you believe in something, you don't get as much stick. The people who get the stick and the criticism are those people who change their views for career purposes and to get on. And people don't like that. If people stick by what they believe in, then people say, well, that's fair enough.
But if you bought into the European thing, given your background, you could have climbed the ladder under Blair's premiership.
Maybe. I was a minister. I was in the government for 3 years. I wasn't the greatest minister or whip ever. I certainly didn't enjoy whipping. It was. It's not my natural forte to do that. There were things I didn't like about the Blair government. I was extremely glad when we were elected in '97 that there was a Labour government. I was sad, certainly over the first 4 years, we didn't do more. And then I think the Iraq war was a disaster, both for the Labour Party and the country.
And could you see that at the time?
Well, I voted against it.
Yeah.
I didn't see how it would completely destabilise the Middle East. I mean, people don't always realise that the catastrophe in Syria is really the remnants of the Iraqi army. So, and it's spread terrorism and chaos throughout the Middle East, not just there.
And destroy Blair's legacy.
Yes. Blair was a very powerful politician, believed in what he believed in, and he tried to do it not as quickly enough to start with. But the fact that he didn't tell the whole truth about it, he decided early on that he was going to support Bush and the Americans, whatever. And actually, the intelligence that he pretended we had didn't materialise. There were no weapons of mass destruction. And that's what he's remembered for.
Yeah, I'm afraid it is from his perspective.
I did a debate in Durham University 2 or 3 years ago, and I said, when I went to university, that it's now the same distance away from Iraq as when I went, it was from Suez. Nobody talked about Suez when I went to university. When I went to Durham, there was a packed hall, wanted to talk about Iraq. Students, if you go into a students' union now...
Even getting over 20 years on.
It's, they still talk, it defines
It was
quite a lot
kind of a
politics.
moment, wasn't it, of a breakdown of trust, I think, between Parliament, government and the people. And perhaps the Brexit result was part of that manifestation.
It was. I mean, there's been a lot of breaches of trust with the people. The Iraq War was one. The MP's expenses did a lot of damage. And I think we have a genuine problem in this country. I think it's good to be sceptical about politicians and politics generally. That's healthy.
Yeah.
When it turns to cynicism, that we don't trust that lot, then that is very bad for democracy. And that's what's happening with the current Prime Minister.
I mean, yesterday afternoon was pretty extraordinary stuff, wasn't it?
Oh, yes. To have the country and virtually the whole of the Commons who don't believe that the Prime Minister tells the truth on a regular basis is extraordinary. Absolutely extraordinary.
Well, the fact that a police investigation has now become his shield and his cover, I mean, it's almost beyond belief.
The police who were present all the time, because his personal security, the police officers on the door, on down. Of course. Police know what's going on. They don't have to investigate. Everybody knows what's going on. It is a waste. Well, I'll tell you what I think should happen, and I've said it publicly. Labour should put down a motion of no confidence. We'll lose because we haven't got the votes. But those Tory MPs who are saying that they don't trust the Prime Minister, it gives them the chance to show it. And it also gives the Labour Party a chance to show these people want a known liar to continue as Prime Minister.
Strong words, Graham, but shared by many people in the country today, and quite a few in the Conservative Party now are saying it as well. Interesting. Starmer, you know, I thought there were one or two lines that Starmer delivered yesterday that were quite wounding on a personal level, and it was a different kind of Starmer. I don't think he's got much charisma. I don't think he shows much humour. But I just wonder, are we underestimating the extent to which he's unifying the Labour Party? Because we've had years of the Labour Party tearing itself to pieces. I just wonder, you've watched this for decades, is Labour gearing itself up to perhaps try and win an election?
Oh, I hope so. Yeah, I think it is. I think we are. We've had one of the two best prime ministers of the last century was Clem Attlee, who was said not to have much of a personality. Mm-hmm. But along with Churchill, he was probably, those two in very different ways were great prime ministers. So you don't have to have a big personality. What Starmer is doing is giving the Labour Party members a belief that we can win. We're sort of varying a bit between 7 and 10 points ahead in the opinion polls now. We should be further ahead, but that's a good start. And Blair wasn't popular when he was first elected with as leader, with large chunks of the Labour Party. But once people believed he was going to win...
It all changes, yeah.
People row in behind it. It's not a policy issue, it's a belief in victory.
Yeah, interesting. Well, yeah, I mean, we'll have to see. And Graham, finally, one thing you did disagree with Blair on was climate change. You are a climate change sceptic.
I'm a scientist.
I mean, you're happy to destroy the world. You don't want us to have a future.
I'm a scientist. I've looked at the science. I've talked to top scientists across the spectrum. I've been to the Antarctic Survey in Cambridge, where there's a lot of work done. I've been to the Met Office and talked to them. And when you actually talk to the scientists who are doing that work, and you say, but there's a huge margin of error here, they agree. They talk scientist to scientist. I've talked to members of the Royal Society who say they've looked at it and they don't think it justifies the policies that are being followed, but the view that there's going to be a pretty imminent catastrophe. So I've got two problems. One, I think the action we're taking when we're only 1% of the production of the world's carbon dioxide are making the country weaker for no purpose. And they're making poor people poorer and eventually colder. And secondly, I don't think the science justifies it. I listened to one of Obama's science advisors who's just written a book on it. Yeah. And if you went out there, people would say storms in the world are getting worse. They're not. Yeah. There is no evidence. IPCC. So there's all this catastrophism going about, and the evidence isn't there.
Graham, there are issues I will agree with you on, there are issues I will disagree with you on, but it's great to have somebody in Parliament who's independently minded as you are, and thank you for joining us on Talking Parliament.